So, like I asked you earlier, what's the connection between plastic bags, noise ordinances, and rent control? Well, we have Jackson Oberlink from Florida for All to talk to us a little bit about what's going on in legislative session today. Jackson, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
Yeah, so my name's Jackson. I am the new legislative director with Florida for All. And I was born and raised in South Florida, so I've been here my entire life. And I really care a lot about this state. I spent a lot of time working kind of in the climate space. And I've moved on to, broader progressive politics, which has been really exciting. Done a little bit of campaign work, and now I'm getting to work with Florida for All, which is really great, doing our legislative work on the ground here in Tallahassee. I live in Tallahassee now full time. I've been here for about 7 years, and I really love it. And so I'm just happy to get to work for an organization like Florida for All and stand up for the policies and the people that I really care for here in our state capital.
Love that. Yeah, I was able to catch you doing some public testimony in one of the committees, and I thought, man, it takes a lot of guts to do that. Have you always just been doing public speaking, or is this something that you've developed in this role?
Thank you. That's kind of you. I Yeah, I've done public speaking, throughout my life in different kinds of ways. I was a theater kid in high school.
Aha.
I feel like as most good organizers are. So that's something that I'm definitely used to doing. But it's different doing it in committee when you're staring down a bunch of legislators who may or may not agree with what you have to say.
Hmm.
But it's good experience, and I enjoy doing it, and kind of being the voice for the people who can't show up, or take time off work to come to the state capitol and advocate for the things that they believe in.
Yeah, that's so important. I appreciate what you're doing as well. It's essential that everybody have a voice in our state. So thank you for that. Speaking of voices, so what do you think about what's been happening in session, just in sort of a general sense, as far as the last week or so? Anything that really jumps out for you?
Yeah, well, it's been a tough session. Session has just recently officially started on March 7th. So,
Mhm.
but it feels like it's been going on forever. We
Yeah.
had like 7 weeks of committee hearings before that. So it feels like we've been doing this for a while now, but it's been crazy. With the new Republican supermajority, they control over 2/3 of the body in the House and the Senate, which
Yeah.
means that they get to fast track any bill that they want, change the process, change the rules, and really suppress the voice of the people. So that's what we've been seeing a lot of really bad corporate actors pushing some terrible legislation through. But we've also seen a lot of great opposition from people who are fed up with
Mhm.
it and taking the time to come here to Tallahassee and advocate. Recently, I think it was last week, Equality Florida had their lobby days where they had hundreds of people showing
Yeah.
up to fight for queer rights, which is amazing. And then, Gen Cleo, which is a youth climate justice organization that I used to work with, they're having their lobby days, which is great. They're coming here to fight for climate justice. So it's always exciting to see people mobilizing, um, and really making their voices heard, even when it's so difficult like it is right now. But yeah, we've had all kinds of legislation moving. I think most recently, a lot of people have been hearing about a lot of the attacks on the trans community, which has been really horrifying. Um, there
Absolutely.
are bills that get rid of gender affirming care for people under the age of 18. Things that allow like the courts to take custody away from parents who support their trans children. Transgender bathroom bans. I mean, it's really terrible stuff, and that's just something that hits close to home for me because as a member of the LGBT community, I have a lot of queer friends and family who would be impacted by this legislation. And there's no other way to say it other than they're trying to commit trans genocide essentially across the country. But it's really inspiring to see all of the amazing work that's being done by groups like Equality Florida and Planned Parenthood to fight these terrible bills.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, bottom line is it's healthcare, and people
Yeah.
should have access to whatever healthcare they need in whatever form that it is, right? Um, well, it's good to hear. I've heard quite a bit from folks about the amount of advocacy that's happening, the amount of people from different organizations saying that for them, it's been like sort of a record number of folks coming up to Tallahassee to make their voices heard. And I think, in spite of the supermajority, like you said, I love to see that Floridians are recognizing the fact that their voice matters now more than ever. So that's awesome. Let's jump into something that I've been hearing about a lot as well: local preemption, preempting local governments. Um, what is that? And how is that? Why is that a problem? Like, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, that is a great question. It's a tool that the Florida legislature specifically loves to use. And it's something that most people don't understand, but I think it's such a critical issue that we need to be talking about a lot more. Because it impacts, whatever issue you care about, whether it's housing or immigration or healthcare, or environmental issues. Preemption impacts all of that. And it is one of the favorite tools of our, conservative led Florida legislature. So preemption is a neutral tool. It's neither good or bad. It can be used either way. But basically, what it is when the state government takes away the ability of a local government, like a city or a county, to regulate a specific issue. So the first time that I ever really thought about preemption was the 2008 plastic bag ban.
Oh
And this is
yeah.
something that I used to explain to people a lot because it's a simple one. And basically, what happened is Miami-Dade County decided to ban plastic bags.
Hmm.
They're right on the ocean. It's really harmful for a lot of sea life and sea turtles. And so this was just something that they were trying to do to protect, the ocean, which was great. And as someone who comes from the environmental world, that was something I was really excited about, seeing those actions be taken. And then the state legislature, as usually happens,
Uh-huh.
plastics companies and oil companies who benefit greatly from the production of plastic bags decided to step in, use their money and their political power to get the state legislature to introduce a preemption,
Hmm.
which took away the ability for municipalities in Florida to regulate plastic bags. Um, After that happened, what we saw is Florida, I believe, was the first state to do it, if not one of the first states to do it. That preemption bill then swept across the country in different conservative led legislatures, copying the same thing that Florida did. And so this is something that we see a lot of the time with preemption. It's happening this session, where Florida is just kind of like the guinea pig for the rest of the country on what crazy preemptions can we try to push here in Florida first, and then get the rest of the country, specifically conservative legislatures, to try next.
So what you're telling me is that whether we live in Tallahassee or Miami, the Florida Keys, um, when the state legislature decides to preempt, they're basically saying that we all have to abide by the same rules or the same laws up and down the state, which takes like 8 hours to drive up and down, I want to add. Um, so does it
Right.
really matter? We all that's it. That's the rule. So whether we locally like it or not, that's what's going to have to happen. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And when you hear, conservatives talk about, small government, this is the opposite of that.
Hmm.
This is, trying to get the entire state to conform to a certain set of policies. And a lot of the times, like it takes away from, the local culture and the diversity that we have here in our state across local governments. And that's really disappointing. I think that a lot of the reason that we see preemption as much as we do here in Florida is because the far right has taken over a lot of our government across the state. And some of the only places where progressives still have power is in our local governments, and in cities like Orange County, where the citizens just voted overwhelmingly for rent control, or in Miami-Dade County, where there are still like some progressives in local power, and so they want to take away the ability for those municipalities, those cities and counties, and those citizens to make their voice heard.
So yeah, the rent control. That was something that I thought was popping quite a bit on social media. So you mentioned that now we can't do that if this bill goes through. What's going on with that?
Yes. So there is a really bad bill right now that has passed the Senate already. And it is Senate Bill 102, House Bill 627. So this is a priority of the Senate president. And it is an omnibus housing bill, which means it includes lots of different housing initiatives in it. And it is being sponsored by Senator Alexis Calatayud. And basically, what it does is it preempts rent control entirely in the state of Florida, which, as many of us know, we are in an affordable housing crisis here.
Yep.
And the last thing we need to be doing is taking away one of the very few tools that we do have to help regulate the affordability crisis. The bill also has a bunch of other really terrible things in it, including massive corporate tax giveaways for big developers. It allows for them to get out of paying their taxes if they put money into affordable housing funds. But the affordable housing funds are used to incentivize affordable housing, which,
Right.
I say that in quotes because it's at 120% average median income. AKA in Miami-Dade County, they can charge $2,600 a month for a 2-bedroom, and call that affordable housing.
Wow.
So I don't really consider that affordable housing. And there are other preemption elements to that bill as well, that preempt municipalities from having a say over certain proposed developments in their own communities, if it fits certain standards. Supposedly, if they offer like less than half of their units that they're building at an affordable price, based on whatever their definition that is, then municipalities don't even get a say in where those developments go and how they're built. There are some good parts of the bill, but overwhelmingly, there are just some really terrible poison pills in there that make it a disaster for our state.
So as an advocate and folks that are listening, is there anything we can do about any of this? Like what if we don't like this idea? What can we do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always am telling people, if you don't know who your state representatives are, get to know them, especially when they're not in session. When they're home in district, you can schedule meetings with them just like any other corporate lobbyist can. You are a constituent, and they oftentimes will want to meet with you and hear your concerns. But during session, you should be calling them, sending them emails about policies that you agree with or don't agree with, and really make your voice heard. This session, it's really hard because the Republicans have such a strong majority to stop bills that they want to get done, and this is a priority. In all likelihood, it will pass. It passed its second it passed its second House committee yesterday, and then it was supposed to have one more committee before it goes to the House floor. The Republicans took away the third committee and immediately scheduled it for the House floor this week. So it will be being voted on this week, which is insane,
Yeah.
that they can just do that, because the public can't give testimony when it's on the floor. The only opportunity we have to give input is in committees. And so they're directly limiting input, which is why it's so important to make our voices heard even more so. So there are groups like Florida Rising that are organizing events like Wake Up Wednesday, to have demonstrations and call attention to housing issues and preemption issues. And I think those are really great ways to get involved.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I strongly, constantly encourage people, believe it or not, they have phone numbers. You can call them. They have email addresses. You can send them emails. You can flood their inboxes. I remember watching a session meeting one time on TV, and a legislator holding up like a printed version of people's emails and going, look, I'm getting all these emails and people are really mad about this bill. So we can't do this. And so this empowers our elected officials to advocate on our behalf, right? And represent us like they're meant to. So don't be shy. Send that email, get in those DMs. They have Twitters now, they have, Instagram, they have Facebook, and they're in them. So you should be too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree more. And social media is a more powerful tool than ever,
Yeah,
currently. So, we shouldn't only be using social media, but definitely make your voice heard. Call out your state representatives, because they're not used to people paying attention to what's going on in Tallahassee.
right.
They've been getting away with a lot of stuff because people aren't seeing what happens up here. It's so far away from their districts and their constituents. But when their voters, the people who get to elect them, start paying attention, it makes them nervous, especially, more vulnerable incumbents, people in swing districts. So
Mhm.
those are especially the people who had narrow elections. Putting pressure on them specifically is really important too.
Ooh, I love that strategy. Is there anything else that you want to update us on before we let you go?
Yes. So unfortunately, I think the biggest bill that I want to talk about today, there are actually two quick ones that I will bring up. Um, but House Bill 1515 and Senate Bill 170. So this is the bill that we call the mother of all preemptions, or the Death Star preemption bill for Star Wars fans.
Wow.
But basically, yeah, it's intense language, but rightfully so, because this is a bill that has been dreamt up by corporations and corporate donors. And we would be the first state in the country to pass any kind of bill like this. No one has ever done anything like this before because it's so terrible. But essentially, what it does is it allows for any business or a corporation to sue a local government for any ordinance that they pass that they don't like. And as soon as that lawsuit is filed, they cannot enforce that ordinance. The city and county, it's null and void temporarily, and so until the end of the lawsuit. And at the end of the lawsuit, regardless of who wins, the municipality is still responsible for their own legal fees. And if they lose, the business or corporation can collect their legal fees from the municipality. So this has the ability to bankrupt and financially burden our cities and counties across the state, and give the final say to corporations over what our local governments can pass. So it's a really terrible bill. It has already passed the Senate. They are moving bills really fast this year. And so it did get a lot of opposition from the Democrats on the Senate side. And it just had its second committee hearing on the House side. And I actually, the sponsor for the bill, Representative Brackett, he is the state representative for my hometown where I'm from, Vero Beach, Florida. So, it gets a little personal, for me at least,
Right.
because this bill, I was thinking about how it would specifically impact his district, my home where my family still lives. And growing up, the Indian River Lagoon is in Vero. It's the most biodiverse estuary in all of North America. And if this bill were to pass, corporate polluters like Big Sugar, and sewage companies and chemical manufacturers could sue Indian River County and Vero Beach governments for any ordinance they pass trying to protect the Indian River Lagoon, to stop them from dumping pollutants into it. Sea turtle nesting protections would be put in danger by, beachside bars who want to, have light pollution that would really be harmful to sea turtle nesting. Um, there are all kinds of ways that this would impact Vero directly. And so I talked about that a little bit in my testimony. But this bill, just the implications of it are so far reaching, and we don't even fully understand how everything that it would do, because it's just never been done before. So that bill is really terrifying, and we are doing everything we can to stop it. It is one more hearing on the House side if they don't remove the final committee like they did with the housing bill. So we really need people to get involved on that one and call it out for what it is, which is a big corporate giveaway for the donors for DeSantis's presidential campaign and the legislators' campaigns. So it's
Yeah.
a really bad one.
So what you're telling me is, as if corporations haven't bought enough of our state, right? So as if they already have these folks in Tallahassee, these elected officials that they bankroll their campaigns, they have Ron DeSantis to push policies for them. And so it's almost like they've bled into what's left, which is the local government, right? That was like the last line of defense in us being able to have a say in how our communities are, right? So um if there's like a noise ordinance by my house and like, I don't know, McDonald's is like, not to call them out, but or whatever, XYZ company is like, we don't want this noise ordinance. We're going to sue the city of Tallahassee. And now I'm living next to like this noisy business. Like, is that possible? Something like that?
Oh, absolutely. This
Oh,
would impact, as I was talking about earlier with preemption,
yeah.
it touches every single issue. So this is housing, this is environment, this is immigration, this is labor. Like any issue that your local government handles, this would impact. So a
Wow.
noise ordinance is included.
Yeah.
And it's just unbelievable. Last year, a similar bill to this was passed by both the Senate and the House, and Governor DeSantis vetoed it, which was great. But this bill itself also was introduced last year, and it died in committee. But it's back again, and it looks like it's going to pass all the way through the legislature this time. And hopefully DeSantis will veto it again. But there's a lot of pressure for him to sign this, and there's a lot of corporate money that's incentivizing it as well. But Republicans have a lot of the times described this bill as the preemption to end all preemptions because it's their favorite tool to use. And it's such a common practice now that there's a preemption on every issue every year. But as this bill is moving in committee, there was another preemption bill that was heard. So clearly they have other ideas. There are more things that they can still preempt.
Oh
And
my
this
God.
bill is truly horrifying. It's House Bill 1417. And basically, it's the ultimate landlord preemption bill, preempting municipalities from regulating the landlord tenant relationship in any way whatsoever, taking away all tenants' rights protections on the local level across the state, directly targeting the work that is being done in Miami and Orlando to create tenants' bills of rights and all other kinds of protections like security deposits and noticing requirements that would be completely gutted if this bill were to pass. So they're not just stopping with this bill.
So I love how they have that housing bill and they call it the Live Local Act. Um, but how am I supposed to live local if y'all are going to let me have my local community do what it needs to do so that I actually enjoy living here? Like, I don't, Jackson, I don't understand.
I,
What?
I don't understand either. I mean, ultimately, affordable housing is such a big political issue right now.
Huge.
If you surveyed voters in 2022, they would all tell you that the number one issue that they were concerned about here in Florida was affordable housing. So they have to address it. They have to do something about it. But their solutions are these fake solutions that are really about giving money to their big donors, to developers, these top down solutions. And as we've learned time and time again, trickle down economics doesn't work. These bills aren't going to result in price cuts for consumers. It never does. So they clearly haven't learned that lesson, and we're still dealing with that same mentality time and time again. Yesterday in committee during this hearing for House Bill 1417, The bill's sponsor was, being extremely short and cold and brief in all of the answers she was giving when committee members were asking her questions about how bad this bill was. Um, she was giving one word responses because even they don't want to defend this bill. They know what this is. They know it's a bad bill and it's unpopular. So I was the only one there to testify against it. There were several other people testifying because they brought in all of their other corporate lobbyists to talk up how good this bill is. They got in a line and said their talking points, but that's the game they play.
Well, I appreciate you doing what you're doing, and I look at this, listeners, as an invitation to join Jackson if you can, whether that's coming to Tallahassee to testify in committee or submitting a form in opposition to these bills that he mentioned, and we'll link it in the show notes, and doing anything and everything in your power and in your ability to affect the outcome of these terrible bills, because Florida will not be the same Florida that we remember after these bills become law. So, Jackson, thank
Absolutely.
you so much. Really appreciate you joining
Yeah,
us to provide our session update. And I hope you'll join us again soon.
of course. And just one more thing. I don't like to end on such a sour note. I do a lot of legislative updates and they can seem pretty depressing and disheartening. But ultimately, our presence in the Capitol is disruptive. And when people get involved and pay attention, it does make a difference. They wouldn't be trying to limit our voice so much if it didn't impact them. So don't lose hope. Get involved. Call your representatives. Get involved with groups like Florida Rising because it does make a difference. So thank you for having me.
That's perfect. Thank you.